Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this Easing Energy Code ACE compliance session. As you get settled, a few reminders before we get started. Please do not use the chat box to ask any questions for today's panelists. Instead, use the Q&A. With the Q&A feature, attendees can like a question to move it to the top of the list. This session qualifies for one AIA learning unit for those who watch live, and AIA California staff will report those units for you once you have finished the session. As always, webinar content and additional resources will be available shortly after. Today's session focused on how to make Energy Code compliance fast and easy is brought to you by Energy Code ACE. To introduce our presenters now, Ms. Sally Blair has gained extensive experience investigating and implementing solutions resulting in Energy Code compliance. She has designed and led major compliance initiatives in the state of California, promoting the realization of energy savings intended by the statewide Energy Code Title 24, Part 6. And Jill Marver is a principal program manager who leads the statewide codes and standards team's compliance improvement efforts. Jill has enjoyed working with PG&E for over 30 years, supporting and managing multiple energy efficient programs. Thank you both for being here today. Please take it away.
Okay.
I think I should change my bio, Jill, to just say Energy Code Nerd.
Okay, I think we should. I like it. Thanks so much for having us. I'm Jill, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Sally. Thank you for having us today. Sally and I have been on an adventure or journey, I should say, for quite a while. And today we're excited to share with you the end result, or where we are right now in this journey, which is pretty exciting with this virtual compliance assistant. We have more functionality rolling out in it, and we're excited to give you a walkthrough. I thought today I would start with a little context, like why did we do this? What is it? And then shortly after that, Sally will jump into walking you guys through a re-roof project for non-residential sector. So Sally's moving my slides for me today. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and dive in.
Oh, hold on a sec. It's being slow on me. There we go.
There we go. Okay, for those of you who don't know, Energy Code ACE is actually an investor-owned utility program here in California. I have colleagues at San Diego Gas and Electric and SoCal Edison who help implement this program. And our goal is to make it faster and easier for all of you to comply with the Energy Code. We hope to take away the frustration, the cognitive overload, help make it faster for you. And we do that through a few things. First, we like to understand what your knowledge base is. You know, with the code changing as often as it does every 3 years, you may know it's changing January 1, 2023. We know we have to provide a lot of training, ongoing training, so that you guys can stay on top of what the new requirements are requiring, as well as the existing. However, we know that training isn't always the sole solution. Sometimes if we can provide you with a tool or a job aid, like a fact sheet, or what we're going to show you today, we can make the process easier for you and faster. And of course, if we can raise awareness about what the code requires through outreach efforts, maybe that makes it easier for you when you're talking with your clients and helping them understand that it's not you that are really saying what has to happen. It's really the state, and you're helping your customer get what they should be paying for. So Sally works with me to really understand the needs of the market actors who have to implement the codes. We love talking with you one-on-one, understanding what your challenges are. Then she helps me come up with some good minimal viable products that we can take out and iterate with you. And of course, we vet everything we do with the Energy Commission, so you can trust that what we're giving you has been through them. And then everything we do is delivered through the Energy Code ACE website. And hopefully we're friendly and approachable. That's my wish. So here's this journey that Sally and I have been on. I thought I'd give you a little context. Today we're talking about something that we call a virtual compliance assistant. And the goal of this tool is to TurboTax, if you will, the compliance process for non-res prescriptive projects. So as you guys know, a lot of people use modeling software when you're going to take the performance approach, and that can lead you through the requirements. Well, we decided we wanted something similar on the prescriptive side. So, oh my gosh, we've started way back in 2008. We had an advisory group who basically said, you got to TurboTax the code. I don't have to be a tax accountant to complete my taxes. I shouldn't have to be a full-on energy code expert to effectively comply with that prescriptive project. So then not far into this, and these are the code cycles that you're seeing across the bottom of the screen here. Several years ago, Calvo submitted a letter telling the commission, you know, there's just too many forms. I'm getting lost in them. And we had already started thinking about this tool and coming up with some dynamic forms, which you all have probably used, the PDF dynamic forms. We created those to help make things a little easier while we were developing this more robust, full digital tool, if you will, to help ease your pain. So now that we're headed into the 2022 code cycle, starts January 1, 2023, and the 2022 code cycle will require that you use something like the virtual compliance assistant or Energy Pro, or there are other folks out there who are adopting the schemas we've developed to create similar tools. You're going to need to use something like this to complete your non-res certificates of compliance and also certificates of installation. So we'll talk about how that happens. Don't be too nervous because we're giving you this walkthrough today. It's recorded, so you'll be able to revisit it. And we also have some training on our YouTube channel. So we're here if you need us to understand how to use this, but I think you'll find it pretty intuitive. So transformation of the forms, like I said, Calvo stood up and said, hey, too many forms, I'm getting lost in them. There were 47 forms just for non-res prescriptive projects. And they were paper-based, static. And Sally, with the next slide, Sally is the mastermind behind this. She went in and created 10 interactive dynamic PDFs. Hopefully you've enjoyed using them. We launched the lighting in 2016, and in 2019, we rounded out the suite of forms, if you will. And now, if you'll go to the next slide, you'll see this is some of the benefits of these dynamic forms. The main thing is the forms include the rule set, where they do the calculations for you. And they help indicate whether something is compliant or not on the front page, which we hope helps you and your clients, but also the plans examiner. It can help them spend less time on these projects just by looking for whether or not something complies on the front page. And of course, as you're going to see in the tool today, we include hyperlinks to the actual code language and provide you guys with some help along the way. The digital tool you're going to see today does much more help or guidance, if you will. So the next slide, please. I'll try to hurry and get to your demo. This is what's rolling out. This is what you're seeing here is what the home screen will look like. We're revising it now. But like I said, you're going to just continue to deal with those 10 virtual certificates of compliance, and now 10 virtual certificates of installation. And those installation forms are going to be automatically populated with the certificate of compliance information. So the installers, we're hoping we're saving them time. And as the installers are completing their certificates of installation, which will have the pre-populated information in it from the what was permitted, as they're completing those forms, if they make any substitutions, the form will tell them whether or not that substitution complies. And hopefully we're going to get stuff that's built as designed. So I think, let's see, Sally, next slide is just, this is a glimpse of our YouTube channel. You can get there. There's a YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage on Energy Code ACE. And if you go there, you'll find a series of videos that will walk you through similarly to what Sally's going to do now. So without further ado, let's walk through a non-res re-roof project. Sally,
Okay,
take
great.
it away.
Here we go. All right, so I'm going to be looking at my other screen, so it may be a little awkward. You guys are going to look at the side of my face over there. So this is the Energy Code ACE homepage. So if you just go to the Energy Code ACE website, this is what it looks like. I have signed in as a user, so I'm a registered user on the website, which is why it says my account up here. You have to register to use the virtual compliance assistant because it saves your projects. So to be able to go back and access your saved projects, you need to log into the website. So once you log in, you can come here to My Projects, and that's where you can access this tool. The other way to access it is to go to the Forms drop down on the menu bar, and then Virtual Compliance Assistant right there. So, okay, so once you get here to this tool, we call it the VCA for short. All of the projects that you have already saved is going to be here on your sort of home screen. Now, each one of these projects may have multiple compliance forms. So for example, this project has the commissioning compliance form and the envelope compliance form. So for any given project, you can create however many prescriptive forms you need for your project scope. You can also invite team members. So for example, if you want to invite the commissioning authority or the mechanical engineer to contribute to the commissioning form, you can build your team up for that project here, and you just put in a name and an email address, and the tool will send them an email invitation with a link to accept. All right, so in our example, we're going to start a new project. So starting with the project title, and this is what's going to be listed on the compliance document as the project title. So it's important to understand that everything you put into this tool is going to end up on the compliance form that you end up submitting for permit. So whatever you guys call your project is what you would want to put in here. So I'm going to say Yellowstone Classroom Building is the name of my project. So we're going to do a classroom. All right, and then you put in project city, and I'm going to say this is in San Ramon, and then you're going to put in the zip code 94583. And now you'll notice when I put in the zip code here, it's going to pre-populate the climate zone. The climate zone is always really important to the energy code because it dictates which requirements apply to your project. So you don't have to look up the climate zone or know what that is. If you put in the zip code, it will go ahead and determine the climate zone for you. So as we continue through the tool, and here we're just setting up the project, you can choose which standards you need to be documenting compliance with. So this tool launched under the 2016 Energy Code, We updated it for the 2019. We're updating it again for 2022. And throughout the tool are these little tool tips. So if you need help answering the questions, you can hover over this little tooltip button and it'll give you hints on, the context of the question or help you answer it correctly. Part of what we're trying to do here is make sure you guys are compliant with the energy code rule set before you submit for permit application. So hopefully it's going to reduce the number of correction comments you get from the plans examiner. So that's why we're trying to sort of guide permit applicants to a compliant project before you guys even submit for permit. So our example is going to be under the current 2019 energy code. Now, like I said before, you can fill out multiple forms. So we have all of the prescriptive and mandatory forms available to be completed through this tool. You'll notice we don't have the performance form. So performance has to be created by an energy model through energy modeling compliant software. And this tool does not do that. So this tool is for mandatory and prescriptive forms only. All right, so let's say we want to complete the commissioning form, the envelope form, and the solar ready form. So we can click all three of those, and you can add forms to your project later as well. So this is just what we're adding when we're creating the project. So now it's going to say, okay, which form do you want to start with? Here's another place you can build your team. So you can do it back on your My Projects page, or you can do it here. And we're going to do a re-roof example because it's short and simple. So we're going to go into the envelope form and start to create our re-roof. All right, so what the tool's doing now is loading the questions and the logic related to envelope compliance. So I'm the person that clicks the button 5 times because I don't want to wait, and then it takes longer to spin, just like this as we're waiting. So let's wait. Usually it doesn't do that, but of course it does because we're demoing it. All right, there we go. We'll come back to this later. So for now, I'm going to dismiss that. So there's this navigation bar at the top of the tool. It is live, so you can navigate to different sections using this bar. But if you just hit save and continue the whole time, the tool will just walk you through each section in order. Every single form starts with a scope section. So understanding the scope of your project is important because what the tool is doing is it's taking all of the requirements in the energy code, and as you guys tell us what is in your project scope, it's going to pull the requirements that apply to your project scope and ask you questions about those specific requirements. So the first thing we need to do is understand what the scope of the project is. So we can start by putting in occupancy types. So we said we're going to do a classroom building. Let's include a gymnasium in it, and then some support areas. So we've got our occupancies there. Then we put in the conditioned floor area. And then for this, we're just going to say there's no unconditioned floor area. As you guys probably know, the energy code does have different requirements for conditioned and unconditioned spaces. So that's why we're asking for the separate floor areas here. This question is asking about spaces that might trigger a daylighting requirement. So again, if you're like, why is this asking this question? You can roll over the tooltip and it's going to help give some context to that question. Another feature is that a lot of the questions have the energy code section below it. So this is the relevant section for this question, and it's hyperlinked. So if you click on that, it's going to take you to our reference ACE tool, which is an electronic version of the code itself. So it'll take you straight to the section that is relevant to that question, and you can go ahead and read the code language if you want to get more specific about why this question is being asked. The other thing to note is that the drop downs are, again, trying to guide the permit applicant and the designer towards compliance. So these are the three scenarios that would trigger these daylighting requirements. But if none of these three scenarios apply, then you would say, no, my project doesn't include this. And then the tool is going to say, okay, this project is not triggering the daylighting requirements because it doesn't include any of the applicable scenarios that are in the energy code. Now we're going to answer what our project scope is. So again, requirements depend upon whether it's new construction, an addition, an alteration, or an addition and an alteration. So we're trying to minimize the number of questions we're asking, but there are quite a few questions we need to know to be able to determine what requirements apply to the project scope. So for now, we're going to do alteration because we're going to demo a re-roof, documenting a re-roof. So now it's saying, okay, well, what are you altering? Are you altering the roof assembly, the roof surface material, the walls, the floors, or the fenestration? So we're going to choose roofing material for our re-roof and then hit save and continue. So because we're not doing anything with walls, floors, doors, all of the tool will go ahead and skip all of these sections. So now that we put in the scope of our project, it knows that these sections don't apply, that the roof section does apply. So we've moved on to the roof section. These questions are really common. What is the tag or detail ID, or what's the name or description on the construction documents? The reason we're asking this is because in the compliance form itself, we're organizing by tag ID or assembly to help the plans examiner look at your assembly details and look at the compliance form and understand which detail on the construction document goes with which assembly on the compliance form. So these are to help the plans examiner navigate the construction documents. For a re-roof, you're not really going to have construction documents for a roof surface. So we can just put in a description here saying, well, let's document the gymnasium roof. And since there is no tag ID, we'll just put the same thing for the description. Okay. Requirements depend upon whether this roof is new or an alteration. So we already answered before whether our full project scope was new, addition, or alteration. And now we're talking specifically about this assembly. So we're going to say we're doing an altered roof. Again, the requirements depend upon the occupancy for what that roof is covering. So we're doing a classroom building with a gymnasium. So we'll say this is a non-residential occupancy. Requirements also depend on roof slope. So it's either a low slope or a steep slope roof. So let's say it's low sloped. And then we're going to choose the roofing material. If something hasn't been specified yet and you don't know the answer to this, you can always choose that's to be determined in the field. So we don't know yet maybe what the roofing material is, but for this one, we'll just choose metal. And then we're customizing the drop-down choices based on the previous answers to the questions. So this one is very specific to the energy code, saying, you know, what methodology do you want to use to demonstrate compliance? And there are several choices that are given in the energy code. You can either use solar reflectance and emittance, either aged or initial. You can demonstrate compliance with SRI. You can do a U factor trade-off, or you may qualify for an exception to these requirements. So we've built the exceptions into all of the drop-downs. The NA choices are the exceptions. So if your roof has a weight greater than 25 pounds per square foot over the membrane, that's an exception in the energy code, and you can choose that, and then that's it. That's all you have to document is that exception. For our example, I'm going to use SRI because it's pretty quick. And then another thing we've done is we've built in what the requirement is. So you don't have to go look at the energy code to know what is required. The minimum SRI for the climate zone, for the occupancy, for the slope, right? All those questions we asked before has determined that the minimum SRI required by the code is 75. So if I put in a value here that's greater than 75, then my red alert will go away. If I put a value in here that's less than 75, the tool's going to say, wait a minute, that doesn't comply. So we're giving you an alert right here where you're putting in the information to say whether it complies or not. I'm going to leave this as not compliant on purpose because I want to show you guys what that does. And then you can add another assembly. So we'll say all other routes. And then we'll copy that down for description 2. You have to answer every single question or the tool is going to give a watermark on your PDF form. So the tool will give you a warning. Again, we're only asking the minimum number of questions necessary to determine compliance, but that means every question is required. So again, we'll say this is an altered roof, it's a non-residential occupancy. We can say this is steep sloped. We can say whatever, fluid applied coating, and we can demonstrate using reflectance and emittance this time. So again, it's showing you that minimum requirement from the energy code. So let's say it's 0.25. Now I'm going to leave the thermal emittance blank and show you guys, if you leave this blank and you try to go to the next section, the tool's going to notify you, hey, you're missing an answer that's required. And then you have two options. You can either go back to that question and enter in the information, or you can move forward anyways. You may come to this tool well before you're ready to complete compliance forms. You may come to this tool to determine what performance specification you need to comply prescriptively, or is our current design direction complying prescriptively? If it's not complying prescriptively, you either have to go performance path to make a trade-off, or you have to change your design direction to comply. So this tool documents and completes the compliance forms, but it also can be a design assistance tool because you can use it even very early in schematics or early DD to put in values that you want to specify and see if you comply prescriptively well before you're ready to actually complete forms. So if you don't know yet what you want to specify for thermal emittance, you may want to go ahead and continue and fill out the rest of the form, and then you can come back to that later. So the tool does give you an option, but we're going to fix it, so we're not going to leave it blank. So it takes me there. I'm going to put in 0.78 so that it complies, and then we'll move on. Okay, so because we're doing a re-roof and we already told the tool that, there's nothing to input into the walls section. So this is saying this section doesn't apply. If I hit save and continue, it'll say the same thing for floors, doors, windows, and daylighting because none of that stuff applies. So I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to the summary section. So the summary is where you end up after you've entered in all the information for your specific project, for your design. So now what the tool is doing is it's applying that rule set, it's applying the energy code requirements to what I have input is the design. So I input this information about my design. Now it's saying, okay, let's apply all the requirements that are relevant to this project scope and determine if the project complies or does not comply. Now, because we left the SRI not compliant, the tool is saying, hey, wait a minute, your project doesn't comply. The info you've put in doesn't meet the prescriptive requirements. So you can do a few things. You can go through the summary and review your inputs, because maybe you thought it did comply and you need to figure out what's not compliant, or you made an error in data entry or whatever. You also have to assign a responsible person to the project. So the responsible person, and this is in caps because it's defined in the energy code, is the designer of record. So either the licensed contractor or the designer of record is the responsible person. The energy code allows these forms to be completed by someone else. So for example, if I'm an energy consultant, but I'm not the designer of record, I can complete this form as the documentation author, and then I can invite the designer of record to this as the responsible person, and that person can review the inputs within the tool, and then you can print the PDF from there. The other thing you can do is go ahead and generate your PDF form, but it can't be used for compliance because it's going to say does not comply. So let's go ahead and close that. And this is what the summary section looks like. So it's showing all the different sections within the envelope form. These are all grayed out because none of them apply to our project scope, but roofs does apply, and it's red, and it's saying that we're not complying with the roof material. So we can go back to the roofing section and say, hey, something went wrong there and we're not complying. What is it? And there's my alert saying, here's what doesn't comply. So we can change that to a compliant value, save it, go back to our summary section. And now again, it's reapplying the rule set to say, okay, based on that changed information, now does it comply or not? And then it's going to tell us, okay, now your project complies. So it's a good way. I think it's a good use of this tool to use this as a design tool. If you want to comply prescriptively, come use this tool sooner rather than later, not the night before you want to submit for permit, you're filling out forms, right? So you want to make sure while you're designing that it complies prescriptively. So if you scroll down in the summary section, you can leave additional remarks for the plans examiner. This is really just a comments field where you can say roof surface material will be determined in field by contractor. So if you have some kind of note that you want to write to the plans examiner, making something more clear, it may avoid a correction comment during plan check. So we've provided this sort of comment field so that you can write a note if you'd like to the plans examiner. So now it's going to apply that note. And then you can scroll down even further. And this is the place really to go in and review the data that's been input into the tool. So if you go back to the roofing section where we were earlier, it's going to show all the questions and the answers to those questions. But if you want to see all of the project data that's been input in kind of a snapshot, this is the place to come because it's going to show it all in a table. So this is all the data that we entered. You can see here the required performance and the designed performance. There's this way that different project team members can communicate. So you can say, we need to change the SRI spec for the gym roof and leave that as a note. And then the thread's created. Somebody can come in and reply to this thread. Yes, I changed the spec to 78. Please update the form. And then you can also mark this comment as resolved. so that somebody knows this isn't an open comment that still needs attention. If this were new construction, all of these other sections would apply, right? So you could still go through and look as a summary to all these other sections. There's another section in here called measures, and this section identifies the mandatory measures, the mandatory code requirements that apply to your project scope. So for this roof surface material alteration, sealing exterior joints, and buying specifying and installing a Cool Roof Rating Council CRRC roof are mandatory requirements. So it gives the code section here, and then it gives a note block, a sheet note that you guys could use to put on your plan sheets to cover all the mandatory measures. And later, when we produce the PDF form, you can also produce a PDF note block that includes these mandatory measures. So I will show that in a minute. The next section here includes the forms that need to be submitted to the inspector in the field. So you guys are typically responsible for compliance certificates to get through plan check. But the tool does go ahead and say, hey, this is what's going to be required in the field for the inspector. So these are the non-residential certificates of installation, NRCI. The envelope form applies to any project that fills out the envelope compliance certificate. So the tool is saying the E&V installation certificate is going to be required in the field. And then these two are acceptance certificates related to acceptance testing that have to do with fenestration. So they're not required for this project because we're doing a re-roof. So this is also a good way to determine what acceptance tests are going to be required in the field. So when you guys start getting bids from the installers, you can know if acceptance testing is going to be required or not. The team area in the summary section of the tool is another place you can add team members. So we have several places throughout the tool where you can add new team members. And this is giving us an alert saying, hey, you still haven't assigned the responsible person to this form. So if I'm an energy consultant and I'm not a designer of record, I may need to invite somebody to this form, invite the designer of record as the responsible person. So if you fill out their name and email address, it'll send an email to that person with a link where they can accept the invitation. If I am the designer of record and I'm completing the compliance form myself, I can go ahead and assign myself as the responsible person. And then once you do that, the alert will go away. So then we continue on, and right before we generate our compliance form, it's saying, hey, all sections are compliant. If it wasn't compliant, there would be another, big red exclamation point here saying your form is not compliant, so you're really not ready to generate it yet. But we've got everything compliant. We've gotten quite a few questions saying, hey, I submitted my form and I didn't get my permit. And people are thinking that generating the form here is submitting for the permit application, and that's not the case. So what this tool is doing is just generating the form for you, verifying compliance with the rule set before you go in for a permit application. But the form has to be taken to the building department, the authority having jurisdiction. So we put this little note in here saying, generate the PDF, but then you have to go apply for a permit with the HJ. Okay, so we've got a couple buttons here. First is to get the compliance form, the E&V, and the second one is to download that mandatory measure note block. So we're going to start with the compliance form. So now it's sending our data to a server called the report generator. and the report generator is going to create and download the compliance form. I'm going to go ahead and send the mandatory measure note block as well. So here's our compliance form. Now that I've done it and clicked all the buttons, there we go. Okay, so this is what you would take in for a permit application. So here's the compliance form. You can see all the information we put into the tool. It's there. We're doing an alteration of roofing material. Our project complies. This is really important in Table C. You don't want to submit a form for permit that says does not comply. That's an automatic correction comment, right? So you want to make sure your form says complies before you go in for permit. Here's our note that we added for the plans examiner. And here's the information that we entered for all the roofing materials. Here it's saying the NRCI E&V is going to be required in the field by the building inspector, which is said here. These documents must be provided to the inspector. Here's where they can be found. This is a hyperlink. So if somebody wants to look at what that form looks like, you can go there. No acceptance certificates. And then we have the signature block. So this is the declaration statement. Energy Code ACE can't collect personally identifiable information, PII, because of data privacy laws. So we can't collect company name, address, phone number, any of this stuff. So once you generate this PDF, you're going to have to go in and add the project address and complete this signature block. We know that's inconvenient for you, but we're beholden to the data privacy laws. So this is what we have right now. So I just wanted to point out that before you go in for a permit, you need to complete the signature block. Okay, so the other thing we generated was this mandatory measure note block. You can see it's formatted like a note block in all caps. We did that so we are hoping you could just copy this information and put it right on your plan set. So these were the two mandatory measures from the Energy Code that apply to the project scope. So the tool is creating a custom note block based on the project scope that you've told us applies to your project within the tool. So those are the two resources that you can get out of this. And before we move on, Jill wanted me to mention the certificates of installation. So right now, this tool completes the certificates of compliance. That's what's needed to go in for permit application. The certificate of installation is provided in the field by the installer to the inspector. And we are about to launch being able to complete certificates of installation within the tool as well. So that feature is coming within the next month for the 2019 code, and will also be updated and live for the 2022 code. So Jill, I think we'll stop there and see if we have any questions.
We do have a few.
Great.
One of them is that I can answer quickly. Is this free? Yes, it is. This is provided to you. Use it to your heart's content. And the other one is, will the authority having jurisdiction take the final report as the official Title 24 calculation? And the answer is yes. CEC has completely vetted this tool, so you're good. It produces official forms, and all the calculations are done according to the rule set that backs the code. You're
Jill,
welcome.
can I make a quick comment on that one?
Yeah.
So when you produce the PDF here, the code requires that they go on the plan set. And I know you guys are used to having Title 24 sheets on the plan set. So you would take the PDF, you would fill out that signature block at the end, and you would put it on your Title 24 sheet in your plan set. If you're doing something like a re-roof where there is no plan set, you just print the PDF and submit it to the building department. If there's electronic permitting at the building department, you can submit the PDF electronically. So you just take this PDF, it is the official CEC form, and you submit it to the AHJ just as you would any other form in the past.
Great. Okay, couple more for you.
Great.
I know the answer to this one. Will this ever be available for residential? And I want to take a stab at this and then you chime in, please. Residential has a lot of HERS measures, right? And so the HERS providers have their registries that people need to use to complete their forms. So we haven't thought about doing this for res because the HERS providers pretty much cover a lot of res already. We could do the non-HERS measures perhaps, but that is not in scope at this point. Sally, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, for new construction residential, you pretty much always trigger HERS, which means you have to go to the registries. For some of the more minor residential alterations, you may not trigger HERS, like a window change out, for example, and that could be something that we could potentially facilitate in this tool. I would also add, if you want to see this for those types of residential alterations, contact us and tell us so. You know, we respond to needs we hear from the users. You guys are the users. So we're very open and willing to hear from you guys about what tools and resources you need from Energy Code ACE to help comply with the Energy Code.
So few more, but one just came in that relates to what we were just saying, so I'll cover it first. How does this relate to CalCerts?
Yeah, again, so we right now, none of the non-residential forms need to be registered with the HERS providers registry. So this completes non-res certificates of compliance. We're about to add non-res certificates of installation. Those form sets do not need to be registered with the HERS provider. Even for multifamily that triggers a HERS requirement, the code right now says only the verification certificates, which are completed by the HERS rater in the field, need to be registered. So right now, this tool is not integrated with CalCerts or Cheers because these forms don't need to be registered there.
Okay, great. Is a 10-unit condominium building considered commercial?
It depends on how many stories it is. So that would be considered multifamily. And right now, if it's 3 stories or less, it would fall under low-rise multifamily requirements. If it's 4 stories or higher, it would fall under high-rise res requirements. The high-rise res requirements are very similar to commercial, and they are documented on non-residential forms. So you would use this tool for commercial occupancies or high-rise multifamily, so 4 stories and up, or mixed use that includes a non-residential occupancy. So that's what's documented with these forms.
And I should say, you know, there's a lot of changes coming in 2022 code cycle for multifamily. And if you check out our website, we do have some what's new, what's changed fact sheets, and there are some specifically for multifamily. It's we're gonna try to do as much hand holding as we can around that whole topic in the next year or two. Sally, for a new building, how many forms are needed for a building permit?
For a new building, it depends on it's unique in California, which is not the case in the other states. But in California, any given building can use a mixture of performance and prescriptive. compliant. So for example, you could go performance for mechanical and envelope components, and then use prescriptive for indoor lighting and water heating, etc. So depending on your compliance path for that building, that's how many, the answer changes. But if you are complying completely performance, so whole building energy model, everything's going performance, you would have the PRF form, so that's one. You would need to document outdoor lighting, which can't be included in the model, so that's two. And then there are some other mandatory forms like electrical, commissioning, and solar that would need to be added. Those things are not covered in the energy model on the per form. So that would be 5. If you're going all prescriptive and every single discipline is going to comply prescriptively, you would have up to 10, because there are 10 prescriptive and mandatory forms. So mechanical, envelope, process systems, solar, plumbing, et cetera, et cetera. So up to 10. It's what Jill showed at the beginning is, you know, a couple code cycles ago, there was 47 prescriptive forms. And so what we did is we worked with the Energy Commission to, you know, combine the 6 indoor lighting forms into one indoor lighting form. So there's no confusion. If you have indoor lighting in your project scope and you want to comply prescriptively, you use the LTI, the indoor lighting form, and that's it. So we were trying to make it easier to determine which form is necessary for compliance based on the name of the form. That was a long answer, but.
Good one. We got another question while you were answering. What energy modeling software is most used?
I think it's fair to say that it's probably Energy Pro. We don't know for sure. The 3 for non-residential, the 3 that can be used is IESCE. You can use CBAC directly, which is the state's compliance software, or you can use Energy Pro.
And we provide modeling classes to help you guys understand how to use that software. So if you need it, let us know. We've got those classes for you. And I want to give a shout out to Ben Laylor. Ben works for NORESCO and reports to Sally. And Ben, I've seen him active in the chat. Thank you. Ben is really stepping in behind Sally and taking on the lion's share of this tool. So yeah, he's definitely a great resource for you as well. Rebecca, I think that's all of the questions that I see. Any more out there?
I think I'm going to make one more comment, and if you guys have questions, please ask it. I just want to be really clear, since we're heading into a code change year, right? So this is the year where the code requirements are going to change. So as of January 1st, anything that goes in for permit after January 1st will need to comply with the 2022 standards. Anything that's permitted prior to January 1st falls under the 2019 standards. So what I showed you today is the tool for the 2019 code. We're actively updating this tool for the 2022 code. And we're going to start releasing 2022 compliance forms as they become available. So it's going to be a rolling release between July and the end of the year. So we have a couple that are really close to being ready. So as you guys use this tool, you'll start to see that those 2022 forms are going to become available. And I did see the question, whether the code changes for commercial and residential, and yes, it is, and multifamily. So that the Jan 1 date is true for all occupancies.
And Sally, how can people get help if they need it?
Yeah, actually, I've got kind of a different, I stopped sharing my screen, but I've got a little bit of a different interface because I'm an admin on the website, but there is a bug tool within the virtual compliance assistant. So if you're in the tool and you're finding something that you don't think looks right, you can submit a bug report. The bug report comes to Ben Layler on the phone. So Ben and I will respond to you. We try to respond within 24 hours. So we try to be, we understand people are like, it's urgent. They want to get in for permit. So we try to be respectful. But please do submit a bug report if you're having trouble with the tool itself. There is also a place on the Energy Code ACE website to ask a question. So if you have something that's not necessarily related to this tool, but just a question about the energy code, you can certainly write into the Energy Code ACE Q&A. You can always write into the Energy Commission's hotline. They field a lot of hotline questions each month as well. And I don't have the hotline email right off the bat, but I could look it up and provide it.
Wonderful. So what is one specifically important takeaway that you each have for attendees today?
I'm going to say, please dive in, try it out, and let us know how it is or isn't working for you. We want to work with you. We're here to try to make your life easier when it comes to the energy code.
Yeah,
Sally?
Send us feedback, you guys. You are our users. So positive feedback, areas where we can improve. The whole, my and Ben's job, and Jill's our director and guiding light, is to make compliance easier for people like you. And we realize compliance is not easy right now. It's not. So what we're trying to do is automate your tasks, provide the information at your fingertips, provide training especially when there are code changes. I think my takeaway, and I said it before, is this tool does fill out compliance forms, but it's a really great tool to inform your design. So I would really encourage you and the mechanical engineers and the lighting designers and the commissioning agents and everybody to jump on the tool much earlier. Beginning of DD, even in SD, before you're sending out pricing packages, jump in this tool and determine if your SD narrative is compliant prescriptively. And if it's not, it may be easier to revise your SD package than go performance, but at least at that time, if you don't comply prescriptively, then you have to make a choice there. So I think it's a great tool for that. Make sure you're compliant before you go in for permit. This question is about, can you share the same project? Absolutely. So you can go into the tool at the very beginning. I showed project setup. There are several places in this tool where you can invite other team members. That's what I would do. I would set up a project. I would invite the lighting designer. I would invite the mechanical engineer. I would invite the commissioning authority, and anybody who's completing prescriptive or mandatory forms can complete their forms under that same project umbrella. And I'm super type A and I like things organized. So that's how I would do it. All the forms for this project right there.
Awesome. And then the one last question is, how do you get Energy Code ACE online? How do we access this? Maybe we can put a link in the chat, or if you want
it's really simple. It's energycodeace.com. So go to energycodeace.com, and I showed at the beginning, so you can watch the recording if you missed it, how to navigate to this tool. It's called the Virtual Compliance Assistant. It's under the Forms tab at the very top of the homepage.
Awesome. And we'll send that out with the follow-up information as well. But I do want to thank you both again for this wonderful presentation and the compliance tour. It was awesome. And for attendees, if you've made it this far, a California staff will submit you for your credit. And as always, the recording will be available afterwards, and we're going to send out some additional resources like links and things, and more information about some upcoming webinars. So thank you both again for joining us. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you on our next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.